Today we're going to be talking about how to answer extended response questions in biology with example questions for each of these. My biggest tips for you is to write your responses in dot points. This will mean that you'll be able to count your number of points according to the number of marks, and this should roughly equal the amount of marks the question is worth, plus or minus 1. We'll be using past HSC papers to demonstrate the points, but don't worry if you don't know the knowledge just yet. Just focus on the structure of the question. The first verb we're going to talk about today is identify, and these are really simple ones. You just need to name it, and this can be one word up to a sentence. Now look at a practice question. This one is from the HSC 2019 paper, Identify the Evidence of Chromosomal Mutation in a Karyotype. And this was just looking at a graph. So the context isn't here, but to give you an idea of what you need to say, all you need to say is there is only one copy of one sex chromosome. Describe verbs are also super common and quite simple to answer. All you need to do for the describe verb is to talk about features and characteristics. So let's look at a practice question. Describe one mechanism by which plants maintain internal water homeostasis. This is 3 marks, so you should be including 3 dot points on characteristics. This question only requires us to talk about one mechanism, so we are going to talk about how water is controlled by the opening and closing of stomates. We're going to say that hormones is what controls the opening and closing. And we're also going to say that the specific hormone is abscisic acid, which triggers the need for the stomata to close to keep in the water. And that's all you need to say. So let's go through it again, highlighting the key words. These are all the features and characteristics. The next verb is compare. The compare is all about similarities and differences. To structure your response for similarities and differences, you can draw a table like so. A question could say compare proteins and polypeptides, and if we use the table we just created, changing X and Y to proteins and polypeptides, we can say the similarities is that they are composed of amino acids. And the differences is that proteins are made of one or more polypeptides, while polypeptides are made of single amino acid chains. So again, similarities and differences. One of the most common verbs you're going to see are the explain questions, and they're usually harder to answer. For explain questions, you'll need a definition, cause, effect, and always include an example, even if the question doesn't say so. Let's run through this question. It says to explain how educational programs can be effective in reducing the incidence of non-infectious diseases. Support your answer with examples with an S. So let's start with a definition of non-infectious diseases. It doesn't have to be a full definition, but I've said it's caused by inherited, nutritional, or environmental factors. Now let's get on to the cause in terms of the educational programs. So they can cause an awareness raise in the risks that cause the factors that result in non-infectious diseases. And the effect of that is that it can encourage people to alter their behavior to reduce their exposure to these risks. So for our first example, we're going to talk about UV radiation, which causes melanoma, which is our example of a disease. And we're going to say that educational programs encourage people to wear hats, which reduces the UV exposure. So applying the cause and effect framework we wrote about previously into the example. Now, second example is the same concept, but with tobacco and smoking, which increases risk of lung cancer. So to reiterate what we just did, we first need to include some type of definition. Next, we're going to say the cause of the educational programs, and then we're going to say the effect of these educational programs. We're going to include our first example, UV radiation and melanoma. We're going to say how we'll reduce that risk by wearing hats. And our next example is tobacco smoke and lung cancer. And we're going to say discourage smoking as a way to reduce it. And this ultimately reduces your chance of disease, which wraps up our question. One of the biggest and most challenging verbs you'll have to tackle is the evaluate questions, and we'll talk about this in our next video. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.